let's talk about linting and linting errors within your code. So linting, or a linter, is a program that goes through your code to try and discover problems with it. Essentially, it gives you warning messages when it thinks it might discover a bug or a stylistic inconsistency or some sort of programmatic error. And in this case, Dreamweaver notes those errors by making the line number for that particular line show up in red. You'll notice that I've got two different errors here. One of them I find to be useful. In this case, when I roll over the error, it tells me, hey, the variable note is assigned a value but never used. That can actually be helpful to see within my code that I'm actually creating a variable that I then never use again. So why would I make a variable I never use, right? So that could be useful. I'd get a different error here, for example, if I redeclared note, because you're not allowed to redeclare let variables. And so in this case, it's going to say, hey, you already declared that variable. So this is a redeclaration error, a parsing error in this case. And I could say, oh, that's a useful error to have as well. Now, if I take that away, I'm getting a second error for the console log message. Now this one I actually find to be a little bit annoying. I use the console log a lot during development, and I don't necessarily want to have all these sort of red markers that distract me that suggest there's a problem with my code. Now this isn't so much an error as a warning. So linters don't always discover things that won't make your code run. In fact, all of this code would run just fine if I tried to run it within a browser. But this is a warning message in this case that I'm using a console statement. And you'll also notice that it says something about what that configuration is. There's something called no console within the linter that is turned on. And so it's basically, we're telling our linter that we shouldn't have console logs or using the console within our code. Now, the reason for that is that some code environments aren't in browsers, right? You could use Node.js on the server where there is no console. And so you can't log messages to the server. So that doesn't make any sense within production code for the server. It also doesn't make any sense with final production code for ourselves either. If we're delivering code to a client that's done and we're going to put it live on the web, then we should really remove all console logs from the browser so that the end user won't see things logging to their console. That slows things down, and really this is only used during development. Nevertheless, I find that error to be annoying because I use console log a lot while I'm actually developing my code. So I actually might want to turn that error off. The good news is that we can configure our linter to do just that. Now, Dreamweaver, like a lot of other code editors and applications, uses a linter called ESLint. You can find information about ESLint at eslint.org, and one of the things that we can do is actually go into configuring ESLint and even disabling certain types of comments that we might not want. So there's an option here for disabling rules, and it talks about doing that. Now, you can temporarily disable certain warnings by actually adding a comment into your file. So let's say we go back over to Dreamweaver here, and I want to do that. Well, one way that I could get rid of this no sort of console error message is simply to add a comment in my code right here that says that the ESLinter, we're going to disable the message for no console, that is no longer going to throw an error. So if I add that particular comment, then that goes away, and that linter is no longer sensitive to having console log messages there. Perfect. It's really never an error, it's just a kind of warning anyway, but maybe I want to get rid of that and not use that. Another thing within Dreamweaver that I might actually put into my environment is to tell Dreamweaver that I'm actually using the browser as my development environment, and maybe that I might be using the jQuery library. Sometimes you'll get weird error messages within Dreamweaver if you don't add this particular configuration or comment, and you're wanting to use jQuery and the $ is throwing a message that it doesn't understand what it is or something like that. That could be because of the linter, and we have to tell the linter, hey, we're using jQuery, we're developing within a browser, give us that flexibility to do that, right? So these two comments are sometimes, I might sometimes add within Dreamweaver in order to configure the environment and tell the linter, what error messages I want to see or not want to see. So that's fine. Another way that I can do that though within Dreamweaver is actually to set up the configuration files in Dreamweaver for my linter. And so to do that, I'm going to go under the Site Manage Sites option. I'm going to choose the site that actually has all my code in it, and I'm going to go under the advanced settings for that down to the JS lint option. There's a configuration file that I could edit here in order to do that. And so I'm going to open that up, and you'll notice I actually have already configured it to tell the environments that I'm using might be indeed the browser or jQuery, because those are things I often might be coding within Dreamweaver, is for the browser or for jQuery. So I've already actually configured this to include those environments, saying, hey, these environments are true for me. The other thing that I could do is go through the varying rules that are here. Many of the rules are turned off. It doesn't enforce the use of camel case, for example. It doesn't throw an error if I don't have camel case, or if I don't have particular spacing or something. You can actually turn on and off a lot of different errors here. Most of them are off in Dreamweaver, but some of these throw errors, right? So certain types of things might throw errors, including this no console option. That is throwing an error. I don't want that. I'm going to go ahead and simply turn it off. And so once I turn that off and reconfigure this here, save out my configuration file, and come back to my code, that console should go away. That console log message should go away. Now, it might not go away right away. Like if I get rid of this comment, it actually might come back. And that's partly simply just because I already have Dreamweaver open, and it's not going to necessarily refresh the preferences and configuration files. I might literally need to close out of Dreamweaver and reboot my computer, make sure all my memory is cleared and cache in order to have the configuration take back hold. But that's one way that I can configure Dreamweaver and turn on or off particular linting errors that I don't want to see.